So here we're requesting teachings, and so ideally the best scenario is to request teachings from the Buddha, you know. So we imagine the Buddha's here, and if we understand what a Buddha is, and we'll go into that, we'll talk. Clearly, we have to talk about that as we progress along the path. The Buddha mind pervades wherever there is existence. This is really, so then the Buddha is here, literally. So we are requesting the teachings from the Buddha. So what we're offering is, we're just using our imagination, you know. We imagine piling. If we understand Buddhist cosmology, which is expressed in this first verse, then we would, you know, visualize that, the universe according to that view, but we probably mostly don't know it. So then we think of our world and think of all the marvelous things in this world that everyone uses, that makes people happy, you know. Then we imagine piling up all those things and simply offering them to the Buddha. It's very simple. So use your creative imagination. And the second one is a request, you know, to the teacher, who's the one here doing, to, you know, teach the Dharma. So that's what we're doing. And Nina. Sing, Nina. And if you don't know that, yeah. So, okay. I think you can sing it in Tibetan. It's also good to see it in English. Nothing wrong with that. You decide, Nina. If you know the tune and everything, you know how to sing it nicely. If not, sing it in English, as you wish. And it's the center, and on behalf, it's sort of offering on behalf of everybody. Go on, Nina, you decide.
I'm trying to figure out whether I can sing it in English, because I don't
know. Chant it. Just say the words nicely.
Okay, so we will all recite today in English so that it's easier for everybody to follow, and then maybe we'll chant in Tibetan again next time. So for those who know how to set the mudra as well, you can do it with your hands and put a mandala in your hands as well. So we're not empty-handed, like Venerable Robina said, and we'll start with the short mandala offering. This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all transmigratory beings enjoy this pure land. Perfect, pure, holy gurus from the billowing clouds of wisdom and compassion in the sky of the Dharmakaya, please let fall a rain of profound and extensive Dharma upon the receptacle of those to be subdued, exactly as they need.
As we say this mantra, in the Sanskrit words at the end, we imagine Buddha happily receives our offering. Idam.
Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamyatayami.
Okay. Thank you, Nina. So now the next little prayer, I will lead this one. And what this is, this one, this is 2 things. For those of us who already identify with being Buddhist, these first 2 lines are just expressing our reliance on the Buddha and his teachings. And the second 2 lines are stating our purpose. We would say that, but the Tibetans would say stating our motivation. So we're going to listen to these teachings, as it says, by the merits, which means by the virtuous activity of listening to these teachings. May I become a Buddha so I can benefit all beings. I mean, that's our motivation. It's a long-term goal. It's the most marvelous, altruistic, expansive motivation you could have, you know. So in other words, we're listening to these teachings to see if we can take some tools from them, because that's what it's meant to be. It's meant to be advice, how to think, so that we can develop our marvelous potential so we can be a benefit to others. That's the idea. And we'll sing this one in Tibetan. Sangye charang tsoke chognam la jangcho baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chonyen gi personam ki drola penche sangye drupa shok. Sangye charang tsoke chognam la jangcho baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chonyen gi personam ki drola penche sangye drupa shok. Sangye charang tsoke chognam la jangcho baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chonyen gi personam ki drola penche sangye drupa shok. All right. So this is our second class, right? Isn't it? Second? Talia? I forget.
Yes, Venerable. It's the
Okay,
second
good.
one.
So what we're
Out of
describing,
12.
okay, so what we're doing is presenting the different points of this path to enlightenment, as we know, and in Tibetan it's called Lam Rim. Well, one of the ways the lamas teach often is they first teach extensive, then they repeat it a second time, slightly shorter, and they repeat it a third time, even shorter. So it's always good to start with what we've discussed so far. I have to try and remember it because I couldn't find the video I did, so I can't remember. But I think what we've begun. Talia mentioned in your email to me, we must have talked about. Did we talk about the necessity for a teacher? We discussed that. Talia, do you remember?
No, not yet.
We haven't done that yet. What did we talk about last week then?
We ended with talking about how to wake up by understanding impermanence through contemplating on death.
I understand.
And then
what else did we talk about for the
you started with how Lam Rim is over the overall structure, and you talk about a teach.
I described that a little bit. You're saying.
Yes.
I went through the idea of what the Lam Rim is. Is that what I'm saying?
Yes, you completely covered that already.
What do you mean?
The three schools, you gave an overview.
Okay, the overall of the whole structure.
Yes.
Okay, and the logic of it, and okay, maybe it's good that you should summarize for me, because in between this class and others, and I forget what I've done unless I take notes, and I didn't take notes, and I couldn't find my video, and I haven't got perfect memory. I'm so sorry. Okay,
I will do that for next week. Yeah.
Good, Talia. Okay, so this, I think I probably talked a bit about so what this package is and I say packaging, and it's a good way to put it, why not? A packaging of the Buddha's teachings, all the philosophies, metaphysics, psychology, blah, 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 coming from a teacher in the 11th century, and then based upon that coming from Tsongkhapa in the 14th century, our Gelug lineage Lama. So what he did was, what the essence of this, the point of this whole packaging, we would have discussed this, is to get the experiential implication of it. We're very brilliant. We're very technically brilliant. We're very intelligent. And Buddhist philosophy and psychology and metaphysics and epistemology is super, super interesting. It's, you got to really squeeze your brain, as Lama Yeshe says, So we're very good at all that. So, but it's crucial, like I'm sure I talk like with music and math and cooking even. If you get so caught up in the theories but forget to make the cake or play the music or add up the sums, you're in serious trouble. But that's something I think is crucial for us to remember when it comes to spiritual teachings. Or even indeed philosophy, Buddhist philosophy. If Buddhism is philosophy, that means it really is something you've got to put into practice. You've got to put your money where your mouth is, So the Lam Rim is presented in such a way. The agenda is to gradually move us along, step by step by step, to move us along. So the essence of this first scope, which I like to call junior school, is at the end. The culmination of it is to abide by the laws of karma, which is actually when you begin to start practicing. All the things before that, the various points, and I'll go through these. We've been through some, but I'll state them. This is to prepare our mind. To even want to practice. So, the very first point then, Tsongkhapa, he adds a point at the beginning of the whole path that our teacher didn't mention. So our teacher starts it, his little text, it's the basis of Tsongkhapa's Lam Rim, this presentation. His first step is to is to sort of like do this market research basically, and then come to the conclusion that we're incredibly fortunate. So you're looking at the various conditions, he calls it thinking about, meditating on this precious human rebirth, So that's something we do not think. We usually, because we have low self-esteem and misery, and we have no sense that we created the cause to have this life. We kind of assume someone else plonked us on this planet, and we see all the bad things and feel unfortunate and miserable and overweight and not fair and not intelligent enough and not happy enough and not rich enough, whatever. So we don't ever think we've got a precious human rebirth. We never think that way, mainly because we don't have a sense of cause and effect. We don't have a sense of what caused it. We just think someone else gave it to me. And we don't think we're fortunate often. So it's to really just simply go through the points. I mean, our teacher mentioned something like, Tsongkhapa mentioned like 18 different points. But the bottom line is If we, I know often on computers, on the internet, you're going to see things about, the like the fortunate 0.1% or something, not rich, but fortunate, and that's us. So even if we compare with just humans, forget about comparing with the animal realm, because that's too abstract for us, because we can't imagine being an animal. But if we even compare with humans, we can see that we're really fortunate, even if we're not that rich, even if we're not that beautiful and that famous, or that well off, or the best house in the world, we're unbelievably fortunate. We don't have to work 12 hours a day to get a bowl of rice. We've got some access to some intelligence, some wish to, even the fact that we're sitting in this room together, thinking about something that's how to live your life better. That's miraculous on this planet. I mean, to actually have the capacity and the space and the time, which is all these 18 points are about. The conclusion of it is we've got this space and time as a result of some money in the bank, some friends, some support, a house maybe, a mattress to sleep on, enough food to live, so that that keeps us going, so we can actually access our mind and have a wish to become a better human being, not to mention becoming a Buddha. That's what he means by a precious human rebirth. So that doesn't come naturally, so we've got to contemplate it and think about it and what will come from this. And this is the point every time. What's the action point? At the end of each point, there's always an action point. What's the action point here? Not just go, oh, aren't I lucky? No. So what am I going to do about it? Well, the conclusion is don't waste it. If you've got a precious resource, and that's a good way to put what this human rebirth is. And I think we talked about this. The very first point that our teacher starts with is this one. Think about this precious human rebirth. So his agenda is to give us the wake-up call to think, oh my goodness, I better not waste it. That's the first step. He's priming our mind to get us to even want to practice. Now, before that, Tsongkhapa came along in the 14th century, and he added a contemplation, quite extensive, that he considered is the crucial thing to start with. And as we all know, that's called, thinking about, meditating on, contemplating the necessity to have a spiritual teacher. So I suppose, if we put it in our ordinary terms, this makes complete sense. If you want to learn music, the first thing is to do, you think about how fortunate you are that you've got a piano, you've got a teacher, you've got hands at work, and you've got a noggin, you've got a brain that can internalize the music. And you think, oh, I'm not going to waste these opportunities. This is a precious opportunity. Not everybody can find a good piano. Not everybody can got a good teacher. That's what you think about. I've got these resources. I'm not going to waste it. But before we do that even, and this is the point that Tsongkhapa is making, and of course, it's extensive in the literature, but I want to talk about it in a very simple way. Why do we need a spiritual teacher? I think one of the commonest questions people ask in the West, hang on a sec, I've got to do something here. Excuse me, I have to do something. Please forgive me. Can you just, please forgive me. I've got to go away for about 1 minute. Okay, so it's, Tsongkhapa's, and he adds that to Atisha's structure, this idea that we need a spiritual teacher. And he gives, and of course it lists extensively the ways to find a teacher, once you've found how to devote, the advantages of having one, the disadvantages of not one, the disadvantages of not devoting appropriately, blah, blah, blah. I can't talk too much in all those kind of bullet point ways. Bullet points is fine, but I find it so important for us in our culture to think about it in a down-to-earth way, to try to show the logic of it, because it's so easy for us to mystify spiritual teachings. It's so easy for us to mystify all the concept as if it's different from the world, as if it's different, but it's not, it's really not. It's just that, and when I make these, so I'll talk about so let's look at why do we need a teacher? Okay, why do we need a teacher? I find in the West, one of the commonest questions we ask is, do I need a spiritual teacher? So I suppose that what that implies is, we're not quite sure what it means to develop spiritually. Because if we understood the Buddhist concept of what we're trying to accomplish, trying to become a Buddha, an enlightened being, and if you were to read the qualities of an enlightened person, you'd be quite shocked in normal terms, because it seems like completely science fiction, And even that, seems to me to be a really good point to start with. I'm sure we did that last week. We looked at the word Buddha, the etymology of it. It's very tasty. What are we trying to accomplish? What is a Buddha? What's all this path that culminates in becoming a Buddha? So when we understand a Buddha is a being who has three essential qualities: infinite wisdom, infinite compassion, infinite power. Consciousness becomes Buddha. Consciousness is not physical. We're going to get to that. We're going to do that this morning, this afternoon, this evening for you. We're going to look at what becomes a Buddha. It's our mind. So we're to look at what the mind is, look at the nature of what the mind is. This is what Lama Zopa started with when he began to teach the Lam Rim to modern people. So the first one is a teacher. Okay, then why do I need a teacher? Well, I mean, excuse me, if you think of your life, I don't think there's a single thing we've accomplished since we were born that we didn't learn from someone else. Think about it. Even if you read books, who do you think wrote a book? A person. It doesn't. In other words, the information about how to make a cake doesn't come from the sky. The information how to do anything, even to tie your little shoelaces. It comes, even if you watch your mother, you learned it from your mother. If you just have to think, what's a shoelace? How do I tie it? You'll spend many years trying to work it out. So it's fairly evident that whatever we've learned, good and bad, comes from someone else showing us how. So, to even think, do I need a spiritual teacher, is the fact that we need to ask it. The fact that we even think there's an option. I don't know, God knows what that indicates about what we're trying to accomplish. Because even just to make a cake, you need a good teacher. It's so evident, if we think of the meaning of it. And this is uncharted territory. Becoming a Buddha is not something you've thought about before, not something we've seen, not in our culture anyway. So if you don't think you need to learn it from someone else, I don't know how you're going to learn it, which indicates we don't understand how we learn things. If we think it through, it is evident. Everything we've learned, down to tying your shoelaces when you're a little girl, comes from someone else. So to even think that you should ask the question, do I need one? I don't know what that implies for our minds. It's very curious to my mind, So, okay, how do you find a teacher? What is a teacher and how do you find one? Well, I mean, this is, again, because it's uncharted territory, then we've really got to start thinking fresh. I mean, spiritual practice is an uncharted territory in our culture. There's lots of it. But maybe Buddhism is still only 50, 60, 70 years. It's been well known, entrenched in the West, We don't speak Tibetan, we don't speak Japanese, we don't speak Chinese, most of us. So we've got to have some kind of clarity about it, some kind of certainty. And I think the process we use to find a teacher of anything is exactly all Tsongkhapa is saying, but in not 14th century Tibetan language, with 14th century Tibetan constructs. The first thing is to do, surely the first thing to do is, this is for us, the first thing is to do, what do I want to learn? That's the implication of finding a teacher has to be, what you want to learn, what kind of teacher you're looking for. No, teacher is per se, it could be a teacher of music, a teacher of computers. Here, which are a teacher to lead me to Buddhahood, if we assume that's what I want. Often when we start a spiritual path, we don't know. We just vaguely know we want to change something inside. We don't quite know what spiritual means. We're not quite sure what spiritual path we want. So that's part of the process, isn't it? Whereas in Tibet, 99.9% of them were Buddhist. I think there are a few Muslims. The Catholics tried. I think the Jesuits went in the 14th century. They even translated the Bible into Tibetan. They couldn't get one Tibetan. They gave up, So it's easier in Tibet to find a teacher when 99.9% are all Buddhists. But in our culture, when there are 1,000 different variations of religion, every single type, it's a bit more complicated. So we've got to use our noggins, use our intelligence to check up, So here we are already in a class here that's labeled Tibetan Buddhist. So that's that's Buddhist. Then it's labeled Tibetan Buddhist. Then within the Tibetan Buddhist is labeled Gelugpa, one of the 4 traditions in Tibet, and the variations of those. So, right in this moment, in this case, we're narrowing it down to that. And here we're talking Tsongkhapa, who's the lineage Lama of the Gelugpas, his approach to it, But I think the general attitude is one it's really important to understand. I mean, and I always use the same boring example when I learned how to make a cake from my mum. And I find it I repeat it all the time because it's such a perfect example. It's such a perfect example, Or my Kung Fu teacher. The 2 examples I use. The very first time it really struck me, and this was about a year before I found the Buddhist teachers. I was moving along, looking for my spiritual path. And I was learning martial arts. And I remember at the time, happened to be living in New York, and I was a feminist. I'd been several years really intensive feminist, radical politics, and the final stages of my political activity was feminist politics. And I was, a very serious feminist, but I felt I knew I was moving towards my spiritual path again. I'd given up 10 years before. I'd been a Catholic until I was 19. Then I went through this process of looking for a way to see the world. I didn't put it quite like that then, but I look back, that's what I was doing, Going through a series of political views, trying to make the world a better place, what's causing suffering, what's causing happiness, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I finally was moving towards the end of my political activity, sensing that, moving towards finding a spiritual path. And then I remember I started doing martial arts. So when I was based in New York, I was still a feminist, whatever it was, it doesn't matter, before I met the Lamas. And I remember I really wanted to find a feminist dojo. I wanted to do karate with women. It was very clear, you know. So I found one. And really, some of my dearest friends at that time were whom I met and who became my friends when I was in New York. That's how I met them, and doing karate, you know. So I remember I chose this dojo because the teacher was a woman. I wanted that, very specifically, I wanted that. And I studied for a year. And I loved it. I loved it. My friends, it was a wonderful experience. So anyway, after that year, I went back to Australia and I wanted to continue my karate. So I found a club, and already in this, without going into too much boring detail, already in this process, I knew because I was a radical feminist, I had nothing to do with any men, right? It was just how I was. It was my very sincere radical politics, right? So I decided I want to do kung fu, but karate, but I also continue, but I decided too that I had to stop, I found a karate dojo that was the same style that I'd learned in New York, but it was taught by a man, which is fairly common. So I really had to make this major decision that I had to, you know, it was fine. I was going to be fine. I had to open my mind, I had to stop, you know, cutting off half the human race. It just wasn't valid. So I chose this dojo, and I liked the teacher. So I told him, he asked me I told him I'd done karate before. I told him the belt I had. He put me in that grade. And then after the first class, he called me over, and he was very sweet, very kind. He said, basically, Robina, I think it's best you go back to the white belts, which is the beginners. And I was so insulted. I was so offended, you know. But then I thought about it, and I'm telling you the story because it was the first time in my life. And it was 6 months later I met the Lamas, but it was, no, maybe a year. But it was the first time in my life that it became something really clear to my mind as an experience that you needed a proper teacher and that you need to choose a teacher properly. So what I discovered was, and that was just karate for 1 year, was nothing, that I'd learned wrongly. I'd learned everything wrongly. So I had to start from scratch. And the logical reason, this is what I got, was I hadn't checked the teacher. I mean, this woman was wonderful. I love all my friends I did karate with, but she wasn't a good teacher. She wasn't good at karate. But I hadn't checked. So that's when it really hit me for the first time. And I only got it strongly, even more seriously, when I became a Buddhist, that I hadn't checked the qualities of the teacher. So I learned it wrongly. Now that's nothing. It's just karate. Who cares? But that's what I learned. It was a very strong experience. Because until then, I didn't think you needed a teacher. I had to do it myself. It's true, you have to do it yourself. But then I sort of didn't think you needed someone to use as a mentor. And that was when it became very clear you need a teacher and you have to choose the right teacher. So I learned that then. It was quite strong. So maybe 6-9 months later, I can't remember, certain things happened and I found myself up at Chen Raising Institute, and Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa. Lama Zopa did a 1-month Lam Rim course, and then Lama Yeshe did a 1-month Chen Raising retreat, and I stayed for those 2 months. So that's when I committed to the Lamas. I knew this was my path, but it was really intense having to do that. But I know automatically I was checking on the teachers. I didn't think, okay, how do you choose a teacher? You check on their qualities, but I was doing it automatically. So one of the first things they say is you check on the teacher. First, you just listen to what they say and you check, you begin to check, but you do some more background research. It's called due diligence, you know. Even just to buy a cake, we go online and find 17 different bakeries, even a cake. This is a person to lead me to enlightenment. Oh my goodness. So I remembered, so the other thing I did, I really admired the students. And surely the students of a teacher are a really good proof of the quality of the teacher, you know. It has to be. I was really impressed by the students. Then, you know, and especially Lama Yeshe was the first person I felt connected to. I did Lama Zopa's teachings, but I felt so remote from Lama Zopa. He was so abstract to me and so kind of high. I couldn't get him, you know. But he was the student. He was the student there of Lama Yeshe. Lama Yeshe I liked. So you couldn't have got a better proof of a student than Lama Zopa. I didn't understand him. He was sort of a way above me, I felt. I couldn't get him, but Lama Yeshe grabbed me. And Lama Zopa was the main disciple of Lama Yeshe. You couldn't wish for a better quality student. So, you know, I did all those things without understanding that's what you're supposed to do, but it was logical. Now, and later on, when I was a nun by this point, and I was in London, and it was few years after I become a nun, must be 10 years, I can't remember, no, 6 years, it doesn't matter. And I decided I'd do martial arts again. I was a nun and I was in London, I did martial arts. This time I checked, and the teacher, I remember going to this teacher, Mr. Lee, I always remember Mr. Lee. He was my Kung Fu teacher. This time I did Kung Fu, not karate. But I did check this time. I checked different places. I went, and some are just garbage, you know, these macko ridiculous people. But this one, Mr. Lee, I went to one of his first classes, and it was a children's class. There were like 60 kids, and you couldn't help be impressed by the children. Couldn't help but be impressed. They were disciplined. They were all these young working class London kids, you know, and they had discipline. They were respectful. They were dignified. And they were good at kung fu. So it was an immediate proof to me that Mr. Lee was valid. I checked his other students. So this is how you check a teacher. And we would do it automatically. But when you understand that's what you should do, it's very precise. And this is exactly what we need to do to find a teacher. You first check the teacher, their qualities. Then you check their peers, their reputation. You must do that. You check their students. Then you have to then develop, you know, then you check their teachings themselves to the degree that you can. And you check that they are, you know, the degree that you can, that person is a valid, is a persona, is putting their money where their mouth is, as we say in Australia and maybe in England as well. That they're speaking things that they seem to do. And that takes time to see how a person behaves. You can't see it in the first class. So this is just reasonable. This is logical. How else would you check on a doctor? You check the students. You check all the likes and things. I mean, okay, they manipulate the likes online. But this is exactly what we need to do, because we need to have confidence that this person is not going to lead me up a garden path. This person is going to give me the right medicine. This person is going to make my dress the right way. We always do this. So to think that and so of course, of all things, this uncharted territory, finding a person who could, in this case, lead us to enlightenment. Now, that's where you've got to first choose your path. I mean, you've got all these options in the West. In Tibet, you didn't have any option. So you have to, I mean, we don't even know sometimes. I mean, I know when I was looking for a spiritual path again, after I'd given up being a Catholic, I remember I wanted something spiritual again. That was what was coming when after doing my Kung Fu. I didn't know where to look. So I went back to Mass. I tried that. That didn't work. I tried this. I went here. I went there. I did a course. I did transcendental meditation. So I didn't know I wanted to be a Buddha. That's the point in the West. We don't know that. Who knows you want to be a Buddha? What a funny idea. I wanted what was called a spiritual path. So I looked around. Then I fell into the lap of Lama Zopa, Lama Yeshe, you know. And at that time, I was 2 intensive months. I mean, intuitively, when I got there, it felt like right. But that's not enough to go by. We follow our intuition. We can lead ourselves into big trouble sometimes. We're so stupid, you know, we're so full of attachment. But part of me felt this was right. But it was a difficult time. I struggled enormously, you know, because all the arcane Tibetan Buddha's patriarchal kind of way of presenting everything. It was very difficult for my mind, but I knew I had to persevere with it, because then what I heard when Lama Zopa taught, when Lama Yeshe taught, the thing I kept hearing was, you have to check up. Buddha says, you check up, don't just blindly believe. That was very powerful for my mind, you know, we're the boss. So I like to say, we are the boss in choosing our path, in choosing our teachers. So the way it happened for me, immediately I liked Lama Yeshe. So I, you know, watched him, the whole team. I listened to his teachings. I read his books. I saw his students. So I was gradually doing all my due diligence, if you like, you know. And then I left, and we did 2 months, and I went back home again. And then the following year, you know, during that year, I did some practice every day, and I liked Lama Yeshe. I didn't think of him as a guru. I didn't even like that word. I mean, I'd been a radical lefty feminine political activist. The idea of a guru back in the 1970s was a hideous idea in my mind, being a hard-edged political activist, you know. But I mean, so anyway, I liked Lama Yeshe. I did my practice all the time. And then one day, the penny dropped. One day, it became clear to me after the 6 months of practice. And I said to myself, well, Lama Yeshe is my teacher. Lama Yeshe is my guru, you know, some shift in my mind. So I remember whispering to one of my sisters, Polly, I said, don't tell anybody, Polly, I've got a guru. I was embarrassed, you know. His word was so horrible to me. Anyway, I went back to a year after my first teachings, halfway through that period. I went back 6 months after that point where I felt he was my teacher. I went back to Chen Raising Institute for the second course, the next year. And I remember I'd done some work, and I was going to present it to Lama. I'd done a book or something, one of the books of the teachings, had it done and printed and everything. And I wanted to present it to Lama, and I wanted his approval, but also I wanted to tell him that he was my guru. I didn't know you're supposed to ask. I had no idea about the protocols that, you know, you should, if in the Tibetan style, you'd go with a kata, with a gift, you'd prostrate, please be my teacher. You know, I didn't know that. I was so arrogant. I informed Lama Yeshe that he was my teacher. He said, I know, dear. I didn't even use the word teacher. I was so proud. I said I respected him. I meant he was my guru, but I just said I respected him. I was so arrogant, you know. He said, yes, I know, dear. So that's like when we shook hands. I'd done my due diligence. I checked on his students. I checked on him. I'd done the practices. I looked at his qualities. I read his teachings. I did every day. Something began to grow in my heart, my head first, and it fell down into my heart. So then that's when I decided he was my teacher, you know. Then I, of course, want to inform him instead of request humbly. But from that second, it's a bit like that second in that meeting. I remember the meeting vividly. It's like we shook hands and we did a contract. He basically, this is really a way to put it, you know, I gave Lama Yeshe permission to tell me what to do. Think about this. This is a really powerful point. In Buddhism, they always talk about you never try to convert anybody. You never try to give a person teachings if they don't want it. And that's not some kind of polite behavior. It's just common sense. So can you imagine, let's say I met Mr. Lee, my Kung Fu teacher. Let's say I met Mr. Lee a month before I started doing Kung Fu at a party or something. And he could see immediately that I had really good potential to do Kung Fu. Because I became one of his best students. I studied 6 days a week. I went to every class he did. I trained for like 2 years. Then I left London, so I had to stop doing it, whatever. But let's just say I met him at a party and I hadn't even thought to do Kung Fu. And he could see, because he's a Kung Fu master, that Robina had potential to do Kung Fu. Can you imagine if he grabbed me by the scruff of my neck and demanded I go to his classes and force his Kung Fu upon me, which is how we think about religion. It's so grotesque, you know. We try to manipulate people to force them to come. Even with our own ideas, we like a certain movie, we try to force a person to like the movie as well. Oh, you'll really love it. And we sort of force, that's attachment, you know. So we know you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. It's a powerful statement. And this is what's behind the whole Buddhist approach. What's the point? What's the point of Mr. Lee shoving Kung Fu down my throat when I yet hadn't decided I wanted it? So this is the crucial point. The first step has to be that you want it. This is how you learn to help people. Your brother could be an alcoholic and you can see he needs AA. You can see he needs help, but he doesn't know that yet. So you can't force him to go to AA. You can't force the advice down his throat. It's so logical. So that's why you keep your mouth shut. So the Lama Yeshe, you know, I think, yeah, I remember a year before I'd taken refuge with Lama. He gave me a name. He remembered me. He saw me. He knew me. Now, he probably could see right then, that first meeting, he could see we had a strong karmic connection. Lama's a high being with clairvoyance and all these qualities. He would have seen immediately that I had a karmic connection with him. But it took me 6 months to understand, to acknowledge that, to recognize it, to see him as my teacher. It took me 10 years to recognize Lama Zopa as my teacher. Lama Zopa taught there with that course. They happen to be my lamas, you know, that's all. We've all got our own different teachers. Lama Zopa was there. I knew he was a holy being. I could see, you could tell from his behavior, his teachings, his students, he was clearly a developed spiritual practitioner, but it didn't touch my heart. Lama Yeshe grabbed me. Lama Yeshe touched my heart. But I had a dream when I became a nun after Lama Yeshe, and I became a nun. And I was doing my first big retreat, my first major, like a Vajrasattva 3-month retreat. And I had this vivid dream in which I told one Lama the dream later. It was a very nice dream. The dream was me and a whole bunch of students were at the Nalanda monastery ruins in India. I didn't know what it was in my dream, but when I went there later, I recognized it. We were all at this amazing Nalanda monastery, you know, this great monastic university from the time of India. Back in the 7th, 8th, 9th century, where the Dharma really flourished, you know, and His Holiness always talks about we are part of the Nalanda tradition. All the great scholars, all the great text writers, all come back from, or go back to Nalanda. So I was there with Lama Zopa and all the students in this dream. And so I remember he called me out in the dream. He called me out and he put a text, you know how these long folio texts in the cloth. He put his long text over one of my shoulders. He put his robe, I think, over my other shoulder, and he told me to follow him out. Well, I thought it was a nice dream, you know, and I told this Lama in Dharamsala, and he said, oh, that's the Lama who'll lead you to enlightenment. And I remember thinking, surprise, Lama Yeshe was my guru as far as I can concern. I decided Lama Yeshe was my Lama, you know. This was like 2 years after I met them, I think. So then in other words, I knew intellectually Lama Zopa was also my guru. They're both my main teachers now. But it took me 10 years to recognize. That was when Lama Yeshe passed away. Lama Yeshe passed away in 1982. 83. I still knew Lama, I still didn't feel connected to Lama Zopa. I knew he was there. So all those years, this is my point now, all those years, I'd see Lama Zopa. He knew who I was. He'd see me, he'd say hello, but he never treated me like a disciple. He just but he knew we had karmic connection, but I took 10 years to recognize it. From the time I met the Lamas in 76, it was 86, 87, 11 years before I recognized, before the penny dropped, and I had to practice because I knew intellectually he was one of my teachers. So of course, this is factoring in the Buddhist view of karma, that we'd met before, we have a relationship before, we'd created history. And so this is just me picking up where I left off and continuing to study with Lama Zopa. But it took me 10 years for my heart to realize. So until I was ready, Lama Zopa left me alone. He didn't tell me what to do. He didn't give me instructions. He didn't give me practices. It's like Mr. Lee didn't start telling me about Kung Fu because I wasn't ready to do it. I had to go to Mr. Lee and say, please show me your Kung Fu, Mr. Lee. This is really clear. You have to be ready. So you could argue the very first step is you have to want to find a teacher. You have to want to learn Kung Fu. You have to want to learn cooking. You have to want a spiritual path. Then the door opens and then you start the process, So this is why I always again use the example of saying with my mother who taught me how to make cakes. My mother always knew how to make cakes. I mean, I was one of 7 children. She was good at cake making. So that was always existing. She had the knowledge, but she was like Mr. Lee. She didn't force it on me. And it took her until I was 26. It took me until I was 26 to request my mum, please, mummy, show me how to make a cake. I always joke and say, I'm sure she burst into tears. It took 25 years, 26 years waiting for me to ask. She never forced it upon me. She never made me cook. She never made me do the dishes and those things. I was so arrogant. I never helped in the kitchen or anything. But when I was living in London, I remember the moment. I was living in London. I was about 25, 26, and I was a hippie. But that was before I was a feminist, before I was a radical lefty. And I had the thought arose in my mind, I wanted to make a cake. And it was a carrot cake. I remember thinking about a carrot. Hippies ate carrot cakes. So I happened to be going home to Australia anyway. So I thought I'd ask my mum. Now, the point is, I didn't ask my mum because I'd just been kind to my mum. I mean, I was kind to her, but I wasn't that kind. I was a bit mean. Everything was in place. I decided, the door had opened. For the first time in my life, I decided I want to make a cake. Then I happened to be going back to Melbourne, and I thought, well, I'll ask my mother. Why did I do that? Because I've done my due diligence. I've eaten her cakes. I've eaten her students' cakes, her daughters. Her peers say she's a good cake maker. I'd done all my market research. I'd done my due diligence. I checked my mother. I checked the product. I checked her students. I checked her peers. She was valid. So then I requested, please, mummy, I didn't do this, of course, show me how to make a cake. Can you imagine how delighted she was? Couldn't believe it. She was already my music guru, actually. She's a musician. She used to teach all my other sisters and my brother, the other 6 people would go off to the football on Saturdays. And I didn't like the footy, as we say in Australia, footy, because all the shouting and yelling was just, who cares? So I know I sat with my mum and she taught me classical singing. So I loved those classes. So she was my singing guru already since I was like 15, but it was 10 more years before she became my cake guru. But these putting together these steps, they're very logical when you think about it. You know yourself as little girls, why we didn't study is because we were forced to go to school and forced to learn. And that I remember, because I didn't choose it because I'm so proud and stubborn. You're not allowed to choose where you go to school at 5 years old, are you? You do what your mum says. But I hadn't chosen it. I hadn't decided I wanted to study. I hadn't decided I wanted to. So I never passed any exams. But when my mum sent me to boarding school because I was naughty when I was 13 or 14, suddenly I had the right conditions and I fell in love with it. And I studied for the first time because I chose it. Your mind's got to want to do it. It's so, you can see you can't force people. It's so clear you can't force people. And look how we think of religion, bullying people with it, shoving it down their throats, demanding people believe something. It's no wonder we're so hysterical, This is so important to understand. So it's clear the steps are evident, So anyway, it finally dawned on me Lama Zopa was my teacher. I knew it intellectually. All those years I knew it intellectually, but my heart wasn't ready. So I used to think about it and make aspirations to recognize Rinpoche as my teacher. I'd make offerings, all those things. And then one day, after I'd finished my job with Wisdom Publications, I'd worked for 10 years with Wisdom Publications, and that job was over. I didn't know what I was going to do next. So I was doing a retreat in New Zealand, and Lama Zopa was leading the retreat. And I remember just every day, and I was thinking about this, my teacher, blah, blah, blah. And then after that retreat, I remember Rinpoche called me up for a meeting. And then it seemed just all the conditions came together. He told me what to do. Then from that moment, the conditions must have been right. My mind was ready. And that's when he told me to teach. I never forget. It's almost like, I always say this. I always say this. The memory I have of that meeting when he told me what to do, to go teach. He said, he put, it's like, that Michelangelo picture of God with his finger pointing. There's the memory of that picture in my mind. And Lama Zopa saying, go to Sydney and teach. That's exactly what he said. Go to Sydney and teach. There's a center there, right? I'm not sure if they wanted a teacher, but that's when he first told me what to do. So since then, he's now my teacher. Are we communicating, people? Does it sound peculiar? I'm not trying to make it romantic. I'm not trying to make it mystical. I'm really not. But the thing is, it doesn't come from its own side. That 10-year period, 8-year period, less than that once I've become a nun, about Lama Zopa, I knew intellectually he was my teacher. It's a bit like, I love to read all the different newspapers, and one of the newspapers, the New York Times is one of my favorite papers, and they've always had this amazing weddings section. Don't laugh. I love reading the section all about people, how they meet and how they, then they even have a section on divorce. I just like reading about human beings. And then you read all these, they feature one couple every Saturday, every weekend. And you always read about these people who the guy knew or the girl, if they're lesbians or whatever, doesn't matter. But, the guy met this woman and he knew the day they met, even when they were children, I'm going to marry her. But it took her 27 years to discover it. He always knew all that time. It's like that, So there's some certainty there intellectually, but all the conditions haven't come together. So I knew intellectually Lama Zopa was my guru, but it took several more years for me to nourish those seeds and practice and be ready for the conditions to come together. And that's the way karma works. It's very, we try to bully things to make them happen. You can't force a tree to grow. You can't force a plant to grow. So that's a good example. Intellectually, I knew based on what this Lama told me, my own dreams showed me, but I wasn't ready for it. So I had to work on my mind for these several years, and then the conditions came together, and then it all became natural. Lama Zopa then just started to tell me what to do. It's very skillful. It's very wise, actually. So we've got to be sensitive to it, this process. Anyway, this is my own experience, all right? So then, okay. Now let's look at then why we need a person like that. Why do we need a person? So clearly one of the key things is, if you're going to have a person showing you how to make a cake or become a Buddha or teach you Kung Fu, you've done your checking, you've done your market research, you've done your due diligence, but you have to like them. It sort of seems obvious, You have to like them. So sometimes you're a bit, so Lama Yeshe, I loved Lama Yeshe. Even at a teaching, very easy going for me for Lama Yeshe. It happened very naturally with Lama Yeshe. There was no drama. So every time he taught, I was so happy that Lama Yeshe was teaching. Every time he did a meditation, I was so happy Lama was doing it. I loved hearing Lama's words. I loved hearing what he said. I loved doing his books. It made me so happy. But Lama Zopa made me more nervous. I get nervous around Lama Zopa. It scares me a bit. I'd rather sort of hide behind the other person, So these lamas use different methods, and our teachers in music as well, and our school teachers too, if they're good teachers, they'll use different methods to help us. So the wild kids need to be firmly controlled. If you're soft and sweet, you don't need like some people's experience of Lama Yeshe. People have such different experiences, and this is always the same with all the lamas. Even though I loved Lama Yeshe, he was also very rough with me, very wrathful, And one of my friends has just only ever has seen Lama in a sweet, soft way. I've seen Lama in the most intense way, and each of us sees Lama in a different way because he teaches us in a different way. Even my Kung Fu teacher was exactly the same. Mr. Lee would scream at me I didn't feel insulted. I didn't want to sue him. I was proud, Mr. Lee screamed at me, because he wasn't stupid. I'd go to 6 classes a week. The man wasn't stupid. He could tell that Robina wanted his kung fu. So he could see I was serious. So, but I needed pushing. I was a bit stubborn, probably. I had to be shouted at. I didn't mind. I knew he wanted to give me his kung fu. He knew I wanted his kung fu. So we were in this mutual relationship. That's how it is with the guru. Lama Yeshe could see I wanted the Dharma. He could see I wanted to practice. So he taught me and helped me in Lama Zopa the State according to my needs. I mean, the very first job Lama Yeshe gave me, I was in a state of complete shock. I wanted to run this, but my first job was with Wisdom Publications, and I just assumed I was going to run it because I had all this experience. I'd done publishing, I'd done editing, I'd done graphic design. It was like my dream job. My life was an apprenticeship leading to this job. And then Lama got a note saying, Lama says, fantastic, Robina can be the secretary. I nearly fainted. But I knew I trusted Lama. Now you think of this as a really good, simple example. If I hadn't checked on Lama Yeshe, if I hadn't done my due diligence, if I hadn't become confident that he was valid, and that in Buddhist terms means he's got clairvoyance, he's a holy being, he's got bodhicitta, he's got emptiness, he's the Buddha as far as I'm concerned. If I hadn't got confidence, hear this point, this is the essence of it. If I hadn't cultivated confidence that Lama was valid, that he had qualities, that he knew my mind, that he could see I wanted the Dharma, and that he wanted to give me the Dharma and help my mind according to my capacity. I trusted that. I'd done that thinking. So when he completely shocked me, when I heard that I wasn't going to be the director, and I mean this seriously, I said to myself, poor Lama, he doesn't understand. I said that. But I persevered because I knew he knew what he was doing. So I persevered for several years, struggling mightily. I would not have done that, would I, if I didn't have confidence in Lama Yeshe. If Mr. Lee started shouting at me and I hadn't yet cultivated confidence in Mr. Lee, I would have left that class immediately. But I knew, this is talking Kung Fu, for God's sake. I knew Mr. Lee could see how best to teach me Kung Fu, All this is logic if you think about it. But of course, it's not easy for the ego. Ego wants to be stroked, And we so, in our culture, get so mixed up when we hear devotion. We don't know what it even means. We don't even know what the word means, devotion, I think. We think of it as attachment mostly because we use it in relation to our boyfriend. We use it in relation to our grandmother. We use it in relation to our children. Nothing wrong. But we can't, to think of devotion. And then you think of being a Christian having devotion. You think of, the saints praying to God, which is a bit esoteric to us, But in the Buddhist one, especially the Tibetan Buddhists, as we can see, right? There's a strong emphasis on the necessity of the human being in front of you, the guru, heavy with qualities, apparently is what it means, the Sanskrit, heavy with qualities. The Tibetan equivalent, Lama, something like high. I don't know, I don't speak either language. So we all need a person heavy with qualities, goodness me, So as Lama Yeshe said, in the Tibetan Buddhist literature, there's extensive teachings about, and this is what Tsongkhapa's first point in the Lam Rim. You need a person right now in human form who for you is the embodiment of Buddha. So this is the key point to get. What's the logic in that? What's the logic of this? This is what we have to understand. And I think if we look at it and think about it in ordinary examples, it is so evident, I could have read a cookbook. Of course I could have. People live in reading recipe books and do a magnificent job. But I'm telling, and this is the point now, am I getting to the experiential component of it? Because we are human beings with a human heart, So when I was all ready to make that cake, it's the memory in my mind of that day, the kitchen, the time, our memories must be just some flash, like a picture programmed in your mind, isn't it? But I remember that day. There's my mum. And in fact, the cake she showed me how to make was an apple and walnut cake, not a carrot cake. But I remember the day. It's imprinted in my mind. Because why? Because that's the first day cakes became real for me, from the human interaction, from her mind into my mind. You know how they talk in Tibetan Buddhism about, about an oral transmission. The teacher says a mantra and you hear it and you get it and it goes into your mind. Well, I received an oral transmission from my mother of that recipe. Think about it. It's so logical. In fact, you could even argue I received an empowerment. What is an empowerment in Tantra? It's when you sit in front of the Lama and goes to all these different things, but basically he's transmitting to your mind from his direct personal presence, transmitting to you the power of that practice and giving you permission to do it. It's somehow so logical, that one music class, that master class with that musician, you learn more from that class, that presence of that person transmitting to you the power of that music into your mind. That's the function of the guru. It's so obvious if you put it in practical terms like this. We need the human interaction. If you're a highly evolved being and you've got single point of concentration and you have bodhicitta, because you came into this life like that, then you can access the Buddha directly in a subtle body. In your meditation, you can access the Buddha directly. Tsongkhapa, he got all his teachings from the Buddha Manjushri in the Sambhogakaya aspect directly, like chatting to your friend. Now, we are not that high. We need a person in a body that we can see and hear and touch that looks like me. That's the human being. That's the emanation body. The one that is, so as Lama Yeshe said, Buddha is dead. Shakyamuni Buddha, that human being is not on the planet. So Buddha's teachings, the Four Noble Truths, only become real for you when you receive them from the human being. And that's the point I'm talking about, the process you go through, that you have chosen, you've decided is your teacher, And that the work then is from our side. To think about it, analyze what it means, what is a Buddha, and then finally, eventually, when the essence of this practice, the way Tsongkhapa teaches it, which is straight from the Vajrayana, the essence of it, and the way Lama Zopa always teaches it, which is the highest level, which of course is difficult, is we cultivate the view that that person is the Buddha, right? So what's the advantage of that? Why would you want to think that Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa, your teacher, is the Buddha? Because we have to even think what a Buddha means. And that's why as we learn to know what a Buddha is, and we learn to know how Buddhas manifest, then it can make sense to us. So it's a slow process, All the pieces of the puzzle gradually fit together as we study and practice. So in other words, I did my due diligence. I'd thought of Lama. I'd been to his classes. I practiced every day. Then 6 months later, the penny dropped, and then I announced to him he was my teacher. And then from that second, he started doing what I requested him to do, which is to show me my mind. Because what do you think the job of a teacher is? It's not just to give you the Buddha's words. The real job of your teacher, the real job of being a Buddhist, is to see your mind. So by Lama Yeshe giving me that job of so-called secretary when I wanted to be the boss, what did he do? He shook up everything in my mind. He completely shook me up. I would have done a good job. I'm a good boss, But that wasn't what I had to learn. Lama Zopa, Lama Yeshe was getting me to see my mind. I had to learn to be humble. I had to learn to help. I had to learn to support somebody, the nature of what a secretary is. But it was so shocking to me. I can't describe to you. I'm not trying to be sort of weird, but that's what I had to learn. I didn't need to learn how to run something. I had to learn about my mind. I had to see my delusions, and that's what a Buddhist is doing. So Lama Yeshe was a perfect guru for me. From the first second, he knew exactly what I needed. And it was a mighty struggle, I promise. Oh, what a wise teacher. How kind, But if I hadn't trusted him, I would have walked out the door. So that's why the first step is you've got to have confidence. That's what they mean by faith. We get nervous when we hear the word faith, don't we? But look at the Latin derivative of confidence, confide, with trust, but not just blind, not idiotic trust, using your logic, based on wisdom, based on intelligence, based on your checking, then you become confident. I mean, my mother always knew how to make cakes. She didn't need me to be confident in her for her to be qualified to make cakes. Lama Yeshe didn't need me to trust him for him to be qualified. Mr. Lee was always qualified. I had to see it. That's the job we have to do. That's our job. And the real work, I mean, the more you understand the Tibetan Buddhist path, if you start to develop and you take refuge, you take your lay vows, you do the Bodhisattva path, and then you start doing your Chen raising meditation, your Buddha meditation, your Tara meditation, because they're all from the Vajrayana, which is, postgraduate, but because the whole system is so integrated into and within, framed in the Vajrayana, these become a major part of a person's practices from day one, The practices that you don't need empowerments to receive, like Tara, Chen raising, these things. So this is where you cultivate, this is the way you do in your meditation, where you cultivate this view that my spiritual teacher is the Buddha, and the Buddha is my spiritual teacher. This is, they say in all the teachings, this is the most difficult thing to realize. So for whatever reason, Tsongkhapa begins the path with this, which maybe indicates the degree of spirituality in Tibet, but it's still there. 800 years later, and it's still the way Lama Zopa teaches. Many people don't teach this, but Lama Zopa still extensively teaches on this. He's one of the few, I think, who really teaches extensively on the Tsongkhapa presentation of Guru devotion and how to devote to the Guru, how to find the Guru, blah, 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 But I find it's all there in the text if you want to read it, but I find it helpful to talk like this, to help us see the logic of it, and then we can build understanding by studying ourselves, So if I didn't have confidence in my mother, I wouldn't, if I had, and this is the point. Now, this is also the point. Because I had no direct experience of how to make a cake. I had no experience. So think of this. Therefore, I had no basis in my own mind of judging whether what my mother told me to do was valid or not. I had zero experience. So she could have said to me, put 14 eggs in, I would not have questioned it. That's why with my wrong karate teacher, she said, do this, and I did it. But I had no basis because I had no experience of karate at that time. I didn't know whether she was good or bad when she said it to me because I have no experience. So that's why I should have done my due diligence, because what else can you do except have intellectual certainty about a good Kung Fu teacher by doing your checking? You're confident when you walk into that doctor. You've never met that doctor before, but you've read the reviews. You've talked to the other patients. You've looked at their credentials. This is the point. Why? Because you have no direct experience. You've got to have inferential certainty. You've got to have intellectual certainty first. And then on the basis you choose that doctor. On this basis, I chose my mother. She was qualified. So then my intellect was comfortable that she was valid. So then when she said, now put 2 eggs and whip them up, I didn't question. I didn't say, what do you mean? Why not 6? I shut my mouth and I did what she said. So then as soon as I made the cake, and that's easy with cakes, I had the proof that she was valid. But you can't have the experiential proof first. You've got to have the intellectual. This really is logical. But we don't think through these steps like this. But if all these steps that I'm describing, we've all done them automatically, but we just haven't articulated them like this when it comes to our yoga teacher, our cake teacher. Or that we didn't do it, that's why we got into trouble. And you don't blame them. I mean, I can't blame that previous karate teacher for being not a good teacher. It was my mistake, not checking, We're the boss here. Excuse me for a second. And we can see the minefield when it comes to spiritual teachers, can't we? Look in the West, the dramas of spiritual teachers jumping on their students and accusing them of this, and people accusing them of that, and doing this, and abuse, and blah, 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 Because we don't check up. We're so romantic. We think devotion is like attachment. We wouldn't know. We go to some teacher, oh, wow, he's so charismatic, he's so amazing, he must be the Buddha. How do you know? You didn't do any checking, you just followed your stupid attachment. No wonder you're in trouble. So really, we've got to use our such intelligence, Take responsibility. We are the boss. And that's the same with Mr. Lee. If I hadn't checked properly with Mr. Lee that he was a valid teacher, hadn't seen how he treated his students, hadn't seen all the product, all these students, and then when when we're doing it intensively, he shouts at me. If I hadn't cultivated confidence, knowing that he was good, but more than that, knowing he was a good teacher. I could see that it was clear to me. He wanted me to get the Kung Fu, so he shouted at me. If I hadn't got confidence that he was valid, I would have walked out the class. It's very clear. So your confidence that person is valid is the basis of you growing spiritually. You've got to hear that point, When you're confident, then you know that it's Lama Yeshe. If I wasn't confident and he made me secretary and I was qualified to be the boss, I'm not trying to be silly or arrogant here. I'm being very practical. I would have thought, what is he talking about, this idiot? I'm going to leave. If I weren't confident, if I hadn't done my checking. He didn't force me to do anything. I decided, I agreed that I would do what Lama said. I fought and shouted and kicked and had a big struggle seeing my mind, but I was a willing victim. I did it because I knew I trusted his wisdom. It's got to come from us. So when a person has problems with a teacher, it's because you're not confident. You've got to be confident, and choose the right teachers. And as Papa Rinpoche says, choose your guru very carefully. You're going to end up like them. That's my favorite sentence in the 1,000 pages of liberation in the palm of your hand. I promise. So anyway, I think I need you to ask me some questions now. Because I'm not going to say more about teachers. I'm not going to say all the things they say in the Lam Rim. You have to study it yourself. I'm going to say all this. So ask me some questions if you have any. If not, we'll go on to the next topic.
Please unmute yourself if you have any questions, or you can raise your hand, or you can type in the chat, and one of us will ask the question for you.
Okay. All right.
Anyone?
Okay.
Hey, I've got a question.
Good, Bogdan. Yeah, go.
I haven't got my webcam on today, but I will talk anyway. So I was curious. I was asking myself what kind of implications that has. I mean, you talked about it, but I mean, in terms of when I devote myself to a teacher, how do I explain it? Like the amount of time that is spent interacting with the teacher and stuff like that. You know what I mean by that?
No, I don't. Ask me a different way, sweetheart. You mean what's necessary in the relationship to make it a valid relationship? You mean?
How does it look like to be?
Okay. Well, I'll tell you. Lama Yeshe is dead. Lama Yeshe died 32 years ago. Okay, and he's still. I use his word. I talk about him in the present tense. So this is giving you an example. One example. I met him. He agreed to be my teacher, and I knew him for 8 years, whatever it was. Then he passed away. But since that time, this is where I'm now getting to. Thank you for asking this. When I began to say this before, the real work of developing this relationship, Bogdan, is done in our mind as the disciple in our daily practice of visualizing Chenrezig, of Tara, doing the Lama's wishes, all of these things. We cultivate our relationship. They don't have to do anything from their side because they're Buddha, and they will know exactly where we're at and give us exactly what we need, which might be not to touch us for 5 years, or might be to see us every day, depending on what we need. The work is done by us in our mind, in our practice every single day. That's where you develop your relationship with the Guru as the Buddha. That's the real answer. Do you get that?
I definitely do. Thank you very much.
So it doesn't mean, it all depends on the person as well. Some people, their Lama, their main Lama in this life, their root Guru, the term they use in Tibetan, they might have the karma to be their disciple, to be their secretary, and they live with that Lama every single day until the day they die. That's one relationship. So, like for example, Lama Zopa Rinpoche's attendant, Venerable Roger. He's been his personal attendant, and he's also the boss, the chief executive officer of the FPMT organization. of the actual the head office of the international office. That's his role, and he's been doing that since 1987. So he's also devoted to Lama Zopa. Well, so am I. But you know, I've had probably 20 personal meetings in 45 years with Lama Zopa. So each person's got a different karmic connection, different needs, different karma, different situation. Do you understand? But the bottom line is, it's in your mind that you do the work and you cultivate, and then yeah, that's the essence of it. Can you see what I'm saying here?
Okay, so it doesn't really necessarily have to be that I meet that person, or is that also sufficient?
Many people, I understand. Many people I know, okay, this is a good example is His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Now, everybody in Tibet absolutely has total faith that before the communists came along, Tibetans, everybody in Tibet, you know, or you'd say most of them, just assumed Dalai Lama was the Buddha. And for everybody, he was Chenrezig. He was the Buddha. He was the top Buddha. He was Buddha. But each of them, so as far as they were concerned, of course he's their guru. But most of them would never even meet him. Never, ever. I mean, even Tibetans would have, they're so devoted. Many of the Tibetans in the middle of nowhere would have a room, especially for the Dalai Lama, with a bed to sit on, an altar and everything. This is the Dalai Lama's room, just to create the cause that one day, one lifetime, he'd turn up. I mean, that incredible devotion in the Dalai Lama, you know, incredible. And that's over 800 years since the first one. So other people down in the West, because he meets more people, thousands of people have had teachings from him. Thousands of people have taken refuge with him, have taken bodhisattva vows, have taken empowerments. People have had personal meetings. And also thousands of people in the West would say that he is their root guru. Many people have chosen him as their root guru. I mean, everybody sees him as their guru, but not every, I mean, Lama Zopa and Lama Yeshe are my root gurus, but of course Dalai Lama is my guru, just the way it is. But many people, Dalai Lama is their root guru. Some of them have personal meetings. Some get personal emails. Some meet him regularly. Some never see him, will never have a private meeting in their life. It depends on the person. You with me?
Yeah, I was just asking myself if I then, for example, if it is not the case that I meet that teacher personally, if I would think about doing a solitary retreat or something like that, when would I know then that I'm ready for this kind of practice?
I understand that. Well, it seems to be too also, let's say, I mean, even with Lama Zopa and Lama Yeshe, many, I mean, just my own example, Bogdan, okay, my own example, just as an example. I've been around like 45 years, whatever, just saying that, not to show off, but just to tell the facts. So like I just said, some people have a close physical connection with Rinpoche, that they've got the job to be his servant, his disciple, his cook, whatever it might be, that's their job, you understand? And they happen also to be, he's their Lama. So that person, and another level of it, many people might have, you know, they write a letter to Rinpoche. I mean, he's got a folder of 2,000 letters at any given time. People might wait 2 years to hear from him. So many people will write to Rinpoche. Many people will email, and they'll get answers and they'll get their practices. That's a really common thing. But some other people, depending on the person, their relationship, maybe they've got confidence in their practice, but they've studied the Geshe program, they've studied the basic program, they've studied the master's program with other teachers. You can have many teachers, and because you're seeing them all as your guru, and they're probably all in the same family. So when I go to my Geshe, you know, my philosophy teacher, for example, Geshe Tekchok, I studied with him intensively for 2 years, intensively every day. When I was living in England, this is years ago, I saw him every day. I didn't ask much advice, but I got all my teachings from him. Many other Geshes I've had teachings from. They're all my lamas. So I might, you know, another Lama I might ask, because I'm close to him, there's another Lama I'm close to, you know, and I can ask him questions. And for me, it's like asking Lama Zopa. I will ask him and he will tell me something to do. So it works in different ways. You've got this family of Lamas, and you might get direct instructions from one because that's how you feel. You might never ask another one any questions. You might just pray to your guru and get the answer. Yeah, there's many different ways it works, many different ways it plays out. What do you think?
Well, yeah, that sort of answered my question.
You sound extremely doubtful.
No, I'm just trying to make sense of all this, because you mentioned a few points, and I think I just have to kind of sort it out.
Yes, but the point is, if the person you think is your Lama is around, then you must make effort to contact them. You must make effort to request them to be your teacher. Absolutely, don't hesitate.
Yeah.
I know many people. One woman, she traveled the world looking for her Lama, you know. travel the world, checking out, is this my Lama? Is that my Lama? Is this my Lama? And she turns up and eventually says, where have you been? I've been waiting, literally. So everyone's so different. But don't mystify it, don't fantasize it. Just, if you want teaching, if you want to be someone's disciple, you request. That's the best. You request them. You write a letter, you request. You do something to have a meeting, or write a letter, request, whatever, in that way, whatever it is, if the person is a living person. The best is to be a living person, of course.
Yeah, okay.
Including His Holiness. Don't hesitate. Oh, he's a busy man, I shouldn't ask. No, your job is to write, please Your Holiness, send offerings, send gifts, write a letter requesting. You've got to request. The request then will create the causes.
Yeah.
You got to request. You got to want it and request it, Bogdan.
Yeah.
Don't sit there passively waiting.
I will find a way.
You understand my point, what I'm getting at?
Yes, definitely.
Good. Now
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bogdan. Very helpful for everybody, I'm sure. Who else?
Robina, we have a few questions in the chat, and there's one that's related directly to Bogdan, but I think you just answered it. The question specifically is, if you need to ask the teacher and ask for guidance. I think your answer is yes.
Write them, ring them up, visit them, go there, go to the class, prostrate 3 times, request a meeting, ask, you must ask. We find that very rude in our culture. Oh no, I can't be rude. I can't keep asking. Don't be ridiculous. Asking, wanting is the first step. You've got to want it. You've got to request repeatedly. Don't be a bully and demand and barge in the room, You have to want it and request. Write letters, go to the teachings, request a meeting, whatever you can do. Request. Now, you might have to wait 2 years, like Lama Zopa. You might wait 2 years for a response. Don't get upset. Due to karma, you've got to wait 2 years. You've got to keep practicing, keep creating the cause. You've got to keep creating the cause. It took me 10 years to recognize Lama Zopa Rinpoche as my teacher. We've got to realize our side of the deal. We've got to create the cause. We've got to have the merit. We've got to have the karma. We've got to want it. We've got to practice. I hope that makes sense, people.
Okay. And there's another question from Claudia. When you have felt shock with a Lama who shows your own mind, but you leave the teachings, then when you recognize that he was your
Sorry,
guru,
Talia. Talia, start again. You missed something. I missed something. You need what?
Okay. When you have felt shock with a Lama who shows your own mind and you leave the teachings, then when you recognize that he was your true guru, how can you ask for forgiveness and let him teach you?
Ask for forgiveness.
And also, from the same person,
flashing again. I can't stand these 2 windows flashing all the time. I have to turn my mute on.
Oh, okay, sure. I'll repeat again. When you have felt shock with a guru, with a Lama who shows you your own mind and you leave the teachings, then when you recognize that he was your guru, how can you ask for forgiveness and let him teach you? And additionally, how about the negative karma of leaving the teachings, and how can you purify yourself?
Darling, I think you're making it, if that's how it is for you, that's fine. But when I said I was shocked, I wasn't thinking it like that. The job of the teacher is to show your mind. Mr. Lee's job was to show me my kung. So he shouted at me. You get a bit of a shock first, but immediately you're glad. Could you see it? How marvelous. That's called practice, honey. Don't think it's negative. If you sit there for 5 days getting angry with your guru, then you're in trouble. I wasn't angry with Lama. I was just shocked that I could see my mind. How marvelous. That's what he did it for. You're so happy. Be happy, honey. You saw your mind. Be so glad. You don't need his forgiveness. You didn't do anything wrong. You saw your mind. This is called practice, sweetheart. But on the other hand, if you see your mind during the teaching and then you get upset with the guru, that's different. But why would you? You just saw your mind. You're so grateful. And if you did get angry, then you're purified. You do your 4 opponent powers. Clearly. So I hope that, I think it's important, because by your question, you're sounding like you sat there and were angry with your guru. But just by seeing your mind doesn't mean you're angry. You're seeing your mind. How marvelous. You rejoice. I'm so happy for you. You don't have nothing to forgive. You saw your mind. You didn't. Why forgive that? If you got angry, that's different. So the person needs to answer me, unless they want to talk to me. Or now they've got to answer in the chat box or talk to me personally, because maybe I'm misinterpreting.
Claudia, would you like to talk?
Who asked the question?
Claudia.
Claudia, talk to me, sweetheart. Where are you, Claudia? Claudia.
Hi, Robina. I'm from Spain. I'm a Spanish
good job.
talker.
Good, yes.
And I'm embarrassed talking English.
Ask Fernando to translate for you.
Yo puedo traducir para ti. Si quieres, haz la pregunta en español y yo se la traduzco a Venerable Robina.
Ok, gracias. Lo que pasa es que el maestro en la enseñanza dijo que él golpeaba a los niños cuando hacían algo malo, pero él sabía que los niños conocían cómo era la verdad verdadera, ¿no? Y a mí, yo lo identifiqué como con mi infancia, porque a mí me habían golpeado, entonces yo me sentí enfadada y dejé las enseñanzas por eso.
Okay, so she's saying that the teacher that was teaching her said that he used to beat the children, and he said that they recognized this as a teaching or something like that. So she felt so bad because of the teacher used to do that, and she decided to leave the teachings because when she was a child, she used to be beaten up. So yeah, that's why she left the teachings.
Good. So that means, okay, so what I'm understanding is she was at a particular teaching and she heard that and she got angry with the teacher and then she left and she hasn't gone back, or she's still, this person is still her teacher. What has she now changed her mind and decided he is valid? You have to tell me the rest of the story, please.
Okay, I don't know if it's still her teacher. ¿Es aún tu maestro? ¿Lo dejaste y ya no volviste a verlo? Me dice Robina que tienes que decirle el resto de la historia.
Le dejé porque en ese momento me sentí enfadada, pero luego cuando seguí analizando las enseñanzas y meditando sobre contemplando, me di cuenta que realmente lo que quería decir él, pero ya había dejado las enseñanzas.
So she left the teachings at that time because of what the teacher said.
Fernando, just wait a second. When the words left the teachings, does she mean an individual one class, or does she mean she gave up the teachings completely? These words I don't quite comprehend.
Cuando
todas las enseñanzas.
All of them. ¿Y
So
también el maestro?
Okay, so she gave up. So she gave up Buddhism.
No, por el budismo no.
What?
No.
What did you give up then?
Entonces, ¿qué dejaste?
Las enseñanzas que él estaba dando y el maestro, claro.
What?
She gave up the teachings and the teacher. The teacher.
So you gave up Buddhism, is what she's saying?
No, las enseñanzas que él estaba dando en ese momento, era un curso que él estaba dando.
So only the course, only the teachings that he was giving at the time.
Okay, when she started these teachings with this teacher, had she already decided this teacher was her guru? Had she done all the checking? Had she thought about it? Had she requested? And has she been accepted as a disciple? Had all that happened already?
No.
Well, then he's not your teacher then. So what are you worried for?
Oh.
To speak in Spanish.
Antes de las enseñanzas, él preguntó que él dijo que solo iba a dar enseñanzas a los que tuvieran fe en él. Entonces supongo que la respuesta a la pregunta era sí.
Before the teachings, he asked that he will only give teachings to the ones that had faith in him. So because of that,
please, I do not understand. I'm getting more confused. I need to know. Please, you ask her in Spanish. I know she's hearing me properly, Claudia, just listen. I need to know if she had decided in her mind that this teacher, before she went to these teachings, had she decided he was her guru? I need an answer to that question.
Esa pregunta. Te voy a traducir ahora en español. ¿Ya habías decidido en el momento que fuiste a las enseñanzas con este maestro que él era tu guru? Claudia?
Antes de las enseñanzas, no, pero cuando estaba en las enseñanzas, antes de enfadarme, sí.
So
not before the teachings, but while she was in the teaching room, then she decided that he was his guru.
So it took you so how many days did it take you to check up on him, check on his students, check on his reputation, check that he was a valid teacher? How long did it take you? Fernando, we can't hear you.
Sí, estoy pensando.
She's thinking.
Yo iba cada día con él 2 horas a enseñanzas para 3 meses más o menos hasta que decidí que iba a ser mi gurú, hasta después, cuando me enfadé, ya no volví.
She used to go for teachings for 3 months, and then until she got angry and she didn't went back
She
for
went
more
to
teachings.
this teacher for 3 months.
2 hours per day.
Okay, right. So she felt that she was confident that he was a valid teacher. She felt confident.
¿Sentiste que era un maestro válido?
Sí.
Okay, so when you heard just that one thing, you decided he wasn't a valid teacher and you gave up those teachings with him. Is that correct?
En ese momento en que decidiste que era un maestro válido, ¿decidiste dejar las enseñanzas? Claudia?
Después de eso, sí. Pero aún así,
After that. Sí, dime.
que aún así, cuando yo me enfadé, yo estaba como confundida porque era como un choque entre lo que él dijo y lo que yo pensaba que él era.
So yeah, after what he said, he decided to give up the teachings,
Right.
because
So
she
you-
was in shock.
Okay, so why didn't it occur to you, Claudia? You'd been there for 3 months. Why didn't it occur to you to ask him a question about it so you could get your facts very clear before being so emotional and running away? I'm asking you this question because you're an adult. Why didn't you ask him questions, or even ask his questions? Because, you know, if you'd had any teachings on the Bodhisattva path, you would know that a Bodhisattva has incredible compassion. Like I told you before, Mr. Lee would shout at me, and that's just Kung Fu. That's just Kung Fu. But I trusted him because I had checked up. But so why didn't you ask him? Why didn't you check the logic behind what he did before you made a decision, you know, instead of running away? So I'm asking you that question, Claudia, because you're a grown-up.
Yo le pregunté a las personas que estaban alrededor de él, pero la pregunta no se le llegó a trasladar a él.
So yeah, I asked to the people that were around him, but
No,
the
I didn't
question.
ask the people. I'm asking, why didn't she ask him? Put her hand up and ask a question. Explain to me, Lama, what do you mean you beat the children? Can you explain what you were doing? Get the facts first, Claudia, instead of emotional. I'm asking you this question because you're very intelligent. It's just curious. I'm curious about it. I want to say some more in a minute, but I'm curious about that.
Ok, lo dije antes porque yo me puse mi experiencia de cuando yo era niña. Primero fue mi ego el que actuó ahí y fui emocional por eso.
So I said it before, because when I was a child, it was because of my ego reacting to my.
I understand that. My father had beaten me up as well, but I still used my intelligence and understood that you know, that even my Kung Fu teacher was valid. Even just Kung Fu, I also had been beaten up. So maybe, okay, so I'm asking you, but never mind. What I'm really getting at is, okay, so now, Claudia, how do you feel? Can you see some validity in this teacher? And do you have an understanding of the Buddha, of the Bodhisattva teachings that will explain to you why a person can be tough, but coming from compassion? Do you understand that? Have you studied the Bodhisattva teachings enough to understand that? This is my first point. And second, how do you feel about this teacher now?
¿Me lo traduces, por favor?
Que si ya has estudiado suficientemente las enseñanzas del camino del Bodhisattva, y si es que ya las estudiaste suficientemente, ¿cómo te sientes en este momento en relación a ese maestro?
Siento que actué mal y siento que quiero que sea mi maestro.
I felt that I acted incorrectly, and I wish that he would be my teacher.
So why have you, what has made you decide that if he did beat the children, what has made you decide that he must have done it for a valid reason? That means he must have had compassion. So what made you decide to change your mind? What's the basis of your decision to change your mind?
¿Necesitas que te lo traduzca?
Sí, por favor.
Ok. ¿qué es lo que te hizo cambiar tu mente? Por cierto, Claudia, tenemos un grupo para traducción. Si quieres, ahorita te paso mi teléfono para que te agregue. Pero,
Vale.
¿qué te hizo cambiar tu mente?
Cuando contemplé realmente todo lo que me había enseñado él y cuando vi todo el cambio que había tenido yo cuando estaba con el maestro, incluso después de dejar las enseñanzas, como sus enseñanzas que estaban en mi mente me ayudaban a ir mejor en el camino.
So when I was able to contemplate the changes that I had in my own mind, even after I left the teachings, how it helped me so much, all the things that I learned from him.
Wonderful, 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 Claudia. When did all this happen? How long ago?
Todo esto.
6 meses.
6 months.
Okay, and where this Lama is around still, you can write to him and meet him again or not? Possible?
Él dijo que cuando dejaran las enseñanzas, si alguien dejaba sus enseñanzas, no podía volver. Igual yo si le escribo, sí me puede llegar a contestar a veces.
He said that whenever a person leaves his teachings, they would not be able to be back, though I could write him.
Oh, no, stop. Who told her that?
The teacher.
What do you mean he said that? Please explain that. Exactly what did he say? Exactly the words. This is very surprising to me, Claudia. I've never heard a teacher say that in my entire 45 years of being a Buddhist. So please explain exactly what you think he said and what exactly you think he meant.
Si alguien deja las enseñanzas, no puede volver.
If someone leaves the teachings, cannot come back.
I'm sorry, that's not enough for me to hear. That's too isolated. In which context did he say that? Whom did he say it to? How often did he say it? What is she has to say more to me. I'm sorry,
Porque él dijo que solamente enseñaba el que tenía fe y el que se iba era porque no tenía fe y él no enseñaba a personas que no tenían fe en él.
Because he said that he only teach to people that had faith, and then the people that leaves, it means that they don't have enough faith in him.
When did you hear him say this? In the first week, the second week, the 6th week, the 12th week, once, 25 times, what?
25 times or more, he always say that.
Okay, so then have you tried to write to him and request him to be your guru, Claudia?
About being my guru, no.
Why not, my dear? You're telling me you want him to be your guru. So why don't you ask him? You haven't asked him yet. You're sitting there in suffering, beating yourself, torturing yourself, but you have to ask him. You write a letter. You request him to be your guru. You beg forgiveness for all your mistakes and request teachings. And then you see what happens. And you keep purifying. And if you are convinced he's your Lama, you keep requesting and you keep purifying. What else can you do, Claudia? Are we communicating, sweetheart?
Yes.
What do you think of what I'm saying? Is it helpful?
Pienso que tienes razón, pero creo que está mi ego ahí en la mitad.
I think that you're right, but I think that my ego, it's there in the middle, maybe.
Well, then that's why you're suffering, baby girl. We all suffer because of our stupid ego, not because of anything else. So have some humility. Do you do practice every day? Do you do prostrations? Do you do your practice? Do you keep your commitments and your vows? Do you have any commitments and vows?
No le entendí.
Que si sigue viviendo una vida en tus votos, en tus compromisos. ¿Tienes compromisos y votos?
Sí.
Sí,
sí, los
yes.
Do you do them every day and you keep your commitments?
Hay algunos compromisos que son difíciles de cumplir, pero sí intento.
There are some commitments that are difficult to keep up, but I try.
Okay, darling. In your heart, do you have faith in this Lama?
Sí.
And in your heart, you pray to this Lama?
Sí.
And in your heart, you see him as the Buddha?
Sí.
Well, then you please write to him and request him. And you stop being so guilty. Are we communicating, sweetheart?
Yes, pienso que culpa es lo que está ahí como en...
I think that the guilt is what it's there in the middle.
Not in the middle, it's in the front and the middle and the back. Guilt is not taking responsibility, Claudia. Guilt is a little girl And that's not helpful. Regret is different. Regret, you think I made a mistake. I'm a human being. It's okay, Claudia. You're a human being, precious girl. You forgive yourself and you think and you learn from this, and then you have compassion and you do the practice every day. You heal it. Nothing is set in stone, Claudia. Everything can be changed. So have confidence, sweetheart.
Thank you so much.
Okay?
Okay, thank you so much.
You be brave, okay? What else? Any questions? 11, 12, 13. Any more questions?
Yes. Then, Robina, there are 2 questions in the chat.
Yes.
One from Wendy, and that's quite related to what we just talked about. So I'm just going to repeat the question, and maybe if it's not clear, Wendy can jump in. How can we know the difference between hitting walls of ego or what feels not like the right suggestion for your life course? Robina, you're muted.
I need something more specific, Wendy. That's too grand, too broad, too vast.
So I guess the thing that I feel is, how did you know when Lama Yeshe told you to be secretary that you would hit a wall of ego? And I mean, I guess because you had checked him out. I think my question is more about, I have a tendency to put people on pedestals and give my will over to them. So it's been a lot of work, personal work for myself to connect with myself and to know what's right for me.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
fear of turning my will and my life over to another person.
So what's our first, what was the part, the first part of that last sentence? You something what?
I said I have fear to.
What?
I have.
But where do you think in anything I have just said now, with my mother showing me how to make a cake, with my Mr. Lee showing me how to do Kung Fu, where have I said I turned over my will to them? Where did you hear me ever even vaguely indicate that? So this is the point, and I hear your point, darling, and this is at the trouble. This is why I keep saying I was the boss in choosing my mother to show me how to make a cake. That means I came from a position of confidence, not giving my will. That's weakness. That's childish. That's attachment. That's ignorance. That's attachment to reputation. And that is our problem, Wendy. And I say it like this purposely. I mean, I decided Lama Yeshe could show me my mind. I decided Lama Yeshe. I wanted Lama Yeshe to show me my mind. That's the point, Wendy. Then I'm happy whatever he says because I trust him. That's not giving your will. That's the opposite.
How is
the point that's hard to hear, Wendy? This is the point.
How is the other attachment to reputation, though? I'm interested in that.
Darling, it's the main one we've had all the time. It's the worst attachment of all. We're like these little junkies who start from a position of being a nothing, and we're like junkies desperate for another person, but even to smile at me. And I'll go, wow, I must be a real person. Someone smiled at me. That's where you give all your power away, precious one. That's the nightmare of suffering in relationships. That's attachment. It's revolting. It's disgusting. It's self-loathing. It's from the position of being nothing. That's completely like a nightmare in comparison. And this is why it's difficult to hear this one of Guru devotion. Are we communicating, honey?
Got it.
Good. People.
Yes, Venerable, we got 3 questions, many
Good.
questions. Okay. So one from Lauren that I will read out, and 2 more they will say themselves.
Good,
so
okay.
Lauren, could you please clarify that does requesting and taking refuge with a teacher inherently make them one of your teachers, or do you separately also then request that they be your teacher?
That's a very clear question. in the teachings, there are different levels of teachings. The level at the Patimoksha level, the junior school and high school, the level at the Mahayana Sutra level, and then the Tantric level. And there are different levels at which you can relate to a teacher. Now, Lama Zopa always teaches it at the highest level. And this is if we can, the ideal one, the one that's the best, most powerful for our mind, that whoever you receive refuge, lay vows, even the 8 Mahayana precepts, especially for bodhisattva vows, and most especially a tantric empowerment, anything like that, you'd only take it from a person whom you have decided you want to be your teacher. In other words, why even the simplest cake? Forget about a 5-year, cordon bleu cooking course costing $10,000, or a 1-month cooking course costing $10,000, or a simple friend, a simple person showing you how to make a cake. You would only ask a person you had confidence in. You could only ask a person who you feel is qualified to show you how to make a cake. So by definition, that's one of your cake teachers, by definition. Why would you want to receive something like refuge, where you receive the blessings from the Buddha all the way back, where you receive the vows from a person you don't have confidence in? It's a contradiction. So of course they're one of your teachers, but it's not like, oh, they better be my teacher now, a bit late. No, you decide, you're in charge of your life. So of course they will become one of your teachers. And the best way to get the benefit from that person is to see them as one of your teachers. It's the best one, because what that means is your mind is wide open. You're devoted, and every instruction you hear will go straight in. You'll get the transmission of the teaching. So devotion is a capacity to open our heart. Now like Wendy's talking, when we mix devotion with attachment, it pollutes it. And we have devotion in idiots. And that's why we get knocked around. So here we're talking devotion, meaning an open heart in a person we have checked up on, even to take refuge from. Of course, they'll become one of your teachers, because you want them to be one of your teachers. Does that make sense, Lauren?
Yes, she added in the note saying, yes, very clear answer.
Good.
Thank you.
Good, fantastic. And the other ones?
Yes, Pia, please unmute yourself.
Pia.
Hello. Yes, hello.
You're in Melbourne. Are you in Melbourne, Pia?
I'm in Sydney.
Oh, Sydney, darling, it's 6:30 in the morning. Well done.
Pleasure. Thank you so much. So I guess my question is on the flip side of what Claudia was saying, mainly because I was Buddhist. I stepped away from that. We've been in contact via emails actually. So I've been on the Vajrayogini path. I stepped away for a little bit and found myself on the Sufi path. I have a sheikh that I did take a guru-student relationship with. I have discussed with him that I feel the calling to return to Vajrayogini. I have my altar. I've started my practicing again. He's not pleased with me. I've avoided him now, and I'm just, yeah. I feel a similar relationship that one would have with a Buddhist guru, similar to the sheikh. I've taken the empowerments from him. He has said, "You are my student." I've done that now, but I feel like I need to extricate myself, and my concern is both how, but also what does that mean sort of karmically? I mean, obviously I brought him onto this is all part of my path. What do I do?
That's right. I think there's a very skillful way to be this way, Pia. I really think so. If we understand even a little bit, and I think you do, this idea of pure view, it's like our mind somehow sees everything as a teaching. Even if we, when you go down the road and someone's mean to you, and if you're really skillful, you go, oh, that's a good teaching. It shows me my angry mind. That's a really good attitude to have about everything, especially our teachers. So there you are, making this conscious decision, to remove yourself from one tradition, one teacher, but not totally remove, because it's part of who you are. You can't remove yourself from it. Your Islam path is part of you, but you want to go back to bring into Vajrayogini to the front of you. So then I think the way for you to be, you don't have to speak everything out, but in your heart, like they talk about the merit field, you have your sheikh, you have him right there as a manifestation of whatever you want to call it, who's showing you your mind, showing you the path. You maybe can extricate. I mean, I've got a Buddhist teacher, actually is an interesting example. this is a more dramatic example, who this is many years ago, who actually is one of the Tibetan lamas who's gone against the Dalai Lama, and he's gone against my lamas. So that sounds pretty shocking. It sounds kind of very rough. You get my point here. But for me, the attitude is I leave him right there in my mind. I have no opinion about him being good or bad. I know, as far as I'm concerned, he's the Buddha. He's showing me my mind. He's showing this aspect. I leave him there. I leave him in my merit field perfectly. And so then you keep your mind pure. So you keep the sheikh right there next to Vajrayogini, right there next to the Dalai Lama, whoever you might be there. He's a manifestation of your path. He's a manifestation of the qualities you're trying to cultivate. He's showing you your mind. You might not, I don't have teachings any longer from this Lama from 40 years ago. You might not have more teachings from this sheikh, but you keep your mind pure and you keep him up there with all your other teachers. And he's a manifestation of all the qualities you're trying to become. Then you protect your mind and then you're comfortable.
Thank you. It does. It does. I tried to see if I could stay in contact. He kind of was very clear that you're either doing the Sufi thing.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it was.
And that makes sense. I mean, that makes sense in a way. If you've just chosen, if you've got 3 yoga teachers, and you decided to follow one more than the other, they're all yoga for you, then there's no need, you don't need the other yoga teacher, but you still keep them there in your heart as one of your teachers from whom you've learned so much. So it's your practice that's the main thing, and then you keep your mind relaxed and spacious and pure. That's the main thing. Don't try to, I mean, often it can just be attachment to reputation. You want to make sure everything's all lovely. You don't need to make it all lovely, honey. Your mind is the main thing.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Good, Pia. That's a good point for everybody, I think, because we get so conflicted about these things. Because often I think we want to be good girls, Pia, and make everything nice, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's right. So just your main thing is your own mind, your pure view in relation to this sheikh. That's the most important thing for you. Anybody else? That's really helpful, Pia. Thank you so much, darling. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes, and there's a question from Malu. Would you like to unmute yourself, please?
Yes, Malu.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Antes que nada, no sé si estoy entendiendo bien el tema, pero, por ejemplo, yo a ti te considero pues ahora sí que como mi lama, mi maestra, de quien aprendo, puesto que en este corto camino en el cual he estado dentro del budismo, pues ahora sí que sigo tus enseñanzas y pues también tomé refugio por primera vez contigo, pero no sé si esto implica que yo de alguna manera también ya tenga que solicitar formalmente contigo el que seas mi maestra.
So I don't know if I'm following correctly, but then I took for the first time refuge with you and I considered you my guru. Although I don't know if this implicates or it means that I have to request you directly to be my guru. Dear Venerable Robina, your microphone is.
His Holiness the Dalai Lama, a holy being, he will give refuge to 20,000 people, 10,000 people, 5,000 people. They in their hearts know he is their Lama. They're not going to have a personal meeting and they probably won't write a letter. That is perfectly fine. You don't have to. But sometimes we see we have many lamas. I've got many lamas, but some lamas are my main lama. So Lama Zopa, Lama Yeshe are my boss lamas. In my mind, they're all the same manifestation of the Buddha. There's no difference, but I have a more personal relationship with them. So that's up to you whether you decide. Some people I know, who might take refuge with me because I've been given permission by my lamas. I do my best to do my job, but some people might ask me more questions than other people. So it's up to the individual to decide if they want that, Maru. You have a different way of having relationship with different kinds of teachers. Some people are more close, some you might not see very often, but in your mind, you see, like my point to Pia, she might not anymore have teachings from this sheikh, because she's practicing more the Vajrayogini, but in her mind, he is in her heart as one of her teachers, and she keeps that pure. So that can be the same for you, Marla. You might have refuge from one person, from bodhisattva vows from another person, and then eventually you might meet a Lama who becomes the one you are closest to, who is your root Lama, from whom you receive many instructions. That could be, and that's for you to discover. That's for you to find out. But in your heart, you see them all as the Buddha. Are you understanding me, Malu?
Sí, sí entiendo. Y bueno, lo que me lleva a la siguiente pregunta. ¿Habrá posibilidad de que después pudiera contactarme nuevamente contigo para hablar un poco más del tema?
Yes, I understand. And then this leads me to the next question. Would it be a possibility to contact you to keep on talking about this subject?
Of course it is, John. You asked Talia for my email address, sweetheart. Well, you've got my email address. We've written, haven't we, Malu? See?
Yeah, she has it.
Okay, good.
Sí, lo tengo.
You write to me, sweetheart.
Me escribes.
Okay.
Muchas gracias.
Who else is there now, Talia?
There's
Talia.
no more question in the chat box.
Why is there a person with a hand?
No. Yes, there's one. But I don't know how to pronounce the first name.
Abhijit Ratu. Do you have a question for you?
But he just joined the meeting.
I see. Okay. So there's no other questions there?
I don't think so.
Okay. So this is clearly a minefield, is it not, everybody? I mean, there's even, it's a huge one because we just get confused about it and we make it sort of mystical. But I think it's important to speak it out like this. And that's why I really try to stress on the ground, simple level, So again, there's two main things. And for me, it is logical. Don't hear it as religious. It's logical. This whole concept of seeing your spiritual teacher as the Buddha, right? I mean, that even could mean for Pia, who's an example, she talked about Vajrayogini as one of her practices. It could even mean, Pia, for you, that all your different teachers, the Lama who gave you the initiation, your Sheikh who gave you, Sufi empowerments, you could see them both. When you do Vajrayogini, you see that it's the oneness with your Sheikh's mind. There's no contradiction, It's just a very skillful way of unifying everything. It's very powerful because, I mean, even this Lama, and I give this example, who many years ago was, years and years ago, back in England, my first connection with the Dharma, and when I started working for Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa at their center in the north of England. So in the early 80s, this Lama there, I took initiation from him. So that Lama took Lama Yeshe's center, and now it's his main center. So, I mean, this sounds like just politics and sounds incredible, but he took my Lama's center. He's gone against His Holiness. He criticizes His Holiness, but I took empowerment from this Lama. I have never said one word about him. I've never said one bad word about him. I've never criticized his disciples because I keep my mind pure. Because you see, this is where we start. This is where, when we start to hear the teachings in more depth, and we really start to hear, especially the Bodhisattva path, this is where you start to realize the power of these teachings and the power of a person who would have bodhicitta. Once you've got bodhicitta, you've gone beyond delusions. You've got powerful realizations. You have incredible clairvoyance. I mean, you've got more to go before you become a Buddha, but your mind is so huge, is so powerful. It is so driven by wisdom. It is so driven by compassion. You have incredible clairvoyance, and you will do whatever it takes to be of benefit to a sentient being, and that's really very shaking for our mind because we think a holy person has to look nice all the time, as sweet. But if you're a bodhisattva, and especially if you've realized emptiness, you can lie, you can steal even, because it's truly for the benefit of others. But this is too heavy for our minds in a very deluded world like the current world. Because if we see a person behaving badly, we believe they're behaving badly. We can't even imagine there's a possibility that they could be a bodhisattva showing us our mind. This is too heavy for us. So until we've heard these bodhisattva teachings, this concept of the guru really is quite hard. But for whatever reason, Tsongkhapa taught it at the very beginning of the path, because maybe that just shows the depth of the spiritual development of the Tibetan society 800 years ago. It doesn't seem so relevant now. We're so polluted. We're so deluded. And the concept that a person can do a negative action but be a holy being, this is too hard for our minds. And we're only going to understand that when we hear the Bodhisattva teachings, not to mention the Tantric teachings. Oh, my goodness. And without this as a basis, and that's why, Claudia's point was so good. There she was for 3 months hearing these teachings. And then she hears one thing and it freaks her out because of her own problems, you know. So she rejects him because I mean, this is not criticizing Claudia. We are all like this. We all are very fragile. We all got past history. We don't understand the teachings enough. And unfortunately, and this is including Claudia, not being critical, we bring attachment into it. This is Wendy's point. We can't even hear what attachment means. We confuse it with devotion. You know, it's really it demands a lot of intelligence, a lot of clarity, a lot of going one step at a time. And the certainty, like I said, that's why I keep stressing, we are the boss. No, I don't mean that in a stupid way. I don't mean I go around bossing Lama Zopa. That's ridiculous. Of course I don't. But I am in charge of my choices, my decisions. And when you have that confidence, when I had that confidence, and I keep using Mr. Lee as a simple example. He's not my guru. He's my Kung Fu teacher, for God's sake. He could have been an idiot. I don't care if he cheated on his wife. I didn't care about that. I wanted his Kung Fu. So I'm using it as an analogy because I was confident his Kung Fu was good. And I knew he wanted to give me his Kung Fu. Even when he shouted at me, I was happy. So I've got to be confident about that. But if I'm all attached and all needy, and like Wendy said, handing over my power to Mr. Lee, and then he shouts at me, I'll go and sue the man because I'm all fragile and upset, because attachment only wants to be stroked and to be seen as a good girl, which is our main suffering. So it really demands we become grown-ups, you know, big, intelligent, grown-up, intelligent, checking on these things, having confidence. Then you will get the benefit. Then your heart is open, and your heart is appropriately open. As Pabonka Rinpoche said, you better choose your gurus very carefully because you're going to end up like them. So in that sense, you're the boss in checking. They sometimes say in the text, you should check for 12 years. I mean, we'll be, you know, there's Claudia deciding in 3 months. You can, but it really shows it's not just some flimsy emotional choice, you know. What to say? Everybody, I hope it's good food for thought. It's a very important question, and I'm trying to show the logic of it, because this is the point, you know. The other aspect of it is this: I've got to check on Lama Yeshe. I've got to check on Lama Zopa. I've got to check on the Dalai Lama. I've got to check they're valid. They've got reputation. They've got the qualities. And why should I check? Because I can't see their minds. I'm not clairvoyant. So I've got to check on their behavior, what they say, what they do, the quality of their students. Then I'm confident. And then my little heart can open. So when my heart is open, this is the real point about devotion. And anybody who's got devotion can see this. When my heart is open, their teachings will go flooding in. Think about this point. It's very simple. So if you've chosen the right person, not some peanut, then the teachings they give, which are valid, your heart will easily receive them. Again, look at the analogy of my mother showing me how to make a cake. If I was being stubborn, if I was being arrogant, what do you mean 2 eggs? I'm not going to listen to you. I wouldn't have heard a thing. But my heart was open to my mother at that moment. And why? Because I was confident she was a valid cake maker. I use it as a simplest example, just as an analogy. So the checking and being confident is one thing, then your heart open. These two together, perfect combination. Then you'll receive the teachings very quickly, and you'll make cakes very quickly. You'll become Vajrayogini very quickly. Okay, you people, that's enough. I've run out of voice. First dedicated. 7 minutes early, I know that. I'm going to cheat you of 7 minutes, all right? But I'm running out of voice because I'm shouting so much as usual. So we just make the aspiration. If we're on this path, if we think it's our path, you know, we go one day at a time, one step at a time, don't rush. Then we continually make this aspiration. May we meet all the valid teachers. May we meet the right people. May we meet the right teachers. May we receive all their realizations. May we use our intelligence. And then may we open our heart to receive those teachings so that we can become just like them. That's the point. That's the reason behind it, you know, for our sake and the sake of others. Jangchob simchog rinpoche ma kye panam ke gyochig kye panyampa me payang gong ne gong du helba shog. So maybe never develop even for a moment kind of confused views about our most precious gurus, our most precious teachers. With faith and respect gained from seeing their goodness, may their full inspiration flow into our hearts. That's the reason in the end. That's the whole point, for the teachings to get into our heart. That's the bottom line. That's the only reason for devotion, to get those realizations. We get them. That's it, you know. Thank you, darlings, everybody, so very much. And all the wonderful questions are so important, so helpful. All of you, you know. Thank you, sweethearts. Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Talia.
Thank
See
you
you
so
all.
much, Venerable.
Bye, darling.
Thank you, Robina.
Thank
Thank you so much.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Tama.
Thank you.